I'm Diane Macedo. Today on ABC News Live, global condemnation after Russia's aerial assault on Ukrainian civilians. President Biden and U.S. allies just held an emergency meeting today as Ukrainian President Zelensky asks for more weapons, why he's calling Russia's latest move a terrorist tactic. And the possible warning shot from Russia. Cyber attacks targeted major airports across the U.S. Now the growing concerns that this could be a precursor to something worse. Plus, the growing fears of a rail strike. A union representing thousands of rail workers has rejected a tentative contract brokered by the White House, what it could mean for the economy. But we begin with the war in Ukraine and the growing international outrage after Vladimir Putin hit civilian targets across the country. President Biden participated in an emergency meeting with America's allies today after Russia launched even more attacks. Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell is in Liman, Ukraine, with the latest.
Global condemnation of Putin's deadly aerial assault on Ukraine. The biggest attack since the war began.
President Zelensky on the streets of Kyiv today after the attacks, calling the tactic terrorist, saying they want to instill more fear and affect more people. They did.
The lethal Russian airstrikes Monday targeting at least 10 cities in coordinated attacks across the country. A barrage of 84 missiles and 24 drones slamming into cities across Ukraine in 3 waves.
Dozens of moments like this, a missile flying through the air, striking a power station in Lviv, captured on a dashcam video and posted online.
Hitting multiple civilian targets during morning rush hour. Like in this video circulating online, showing a massive explosion in Dnipro, whilst many commuting to work and school. Even attacks in the heart of Kyiv. Deliberately spreading fear. This college student walking to class downtown the moment a missile hits nearby. The targets had no military importance. ABC's Britt Clennett on the ground in the city.
The width and depth of this crater showing the sheer impact of this attack. The missile parts still strewn along the sides. You can see how close this is to a playground where kids come to enjoy themselves. This is not a strategic military target. This is a clear message of terror.
The attacks killing at least 19, injuring more than 100.
Putin saying he ordered the attack. His personal retaliation after Russia's only bridge into illegally annexed Crimea was damaged over the weekend. The moment a truck exploded, seen here in video circulating online. The bridge, a key supply line, holds symbolic and strategic significance for the Kremlin. But amidst the devastation wrought by Putin,
people heading underground into subway stations that have become makeshift bomb shelters. There, a moment of unity and resistance among strangers, singing the Ukrainian national anthem.
Our thanks to Ian Pannell for that report. And in the wake of new missile strikes across Ukraine, President Biden and other G7 leaders held a virtual meeting with President Zelensky, reaffirming their support for Ukraine. The leaders say in a joint statement that they condemn the attacks in the strongest possible terms and will hold Putin and those responsible to account. They also reiterate that they will never recognize the illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory and will continue to impose economic sanctions on Russia. And back here at home, Russian hackers are targeting American airports. At least a dozen major airports reported cyber attacks shutting down their websites. Thankfully, no flights have been affected, but now there are fears this may be a precursor to more attacks. Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas is tracking that story for us. Hi, Pierre.
The question was whether this was a warning shot. At least 12 airports in the U.S. and worldwide were impacted, including some of the nation's busiest, from Chicago O'Hare to LaGuardia in New York to others in Atlanta, Phoenix, and Denver. The attack on Denver continued overnight. The good news is that the hacks, which some officials believe were launched by a Russian group, did not affect airport operations at all, but instead targeted websites serving those airports. For example, if you were trying to use airport websites to see if parking was available on site, you might have had difficulty in some cases getting that information. These so-called denial of service attacks basically involve websites being overwhelmed by traffic. And while this did not impact airport operations, the question everyone has this morning is whether this attack was a precursor of something worse to come. There's no evidence that this was ordered by the Kremlin, but some congressional leaders are concerned it was in response to Ukraine's recent gains against Russia and that dramatic attack on a bridge in Crimea. FBI and Homeland Security officials are investigating. Diane?
All right, Pierre Thomas, thanks for that. The race to November is heating up with 28 days until Election Day. Republican leaders are rallying in support of Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker, who has repeatedly denied a reported allegation that he paid for a girlfriend to have an abortion. And the gloves are off in Ohio as Senate candidates attack each other's records on the debate stage. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has the latest from the campaign trail. Hi, Rachel.
Well, this race in Georgia could decide which party controls the Senate, and that's exactly why Republicans are going all in for Herschel Walker. Today, Florida Senator Rick Scott, who is the head of the Republican Senate campaign arm, and Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton will travel to Georgia to show their support for Walker. Scott saying Republicans are proud to stand with him. The former college football star has been battered by a series of allegations and scandals in recent weeks, including allegations that he paid for a woman's abortion, despite opposing abortion rights without any exceptions. Democrat incumbent Raphael Warnock is making it clear he supports abortion rights in these final weeks. Of course, that's not the only key race. There was the first and contentious debate between Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan and venture capitalist and Republican J.D. Vance. The two candidates clashing over abortion rights and crime. At one point, Vance insisted Ryan supported policies that led to a 10-year-old girl in Ohio being sexually assaulted. Ryan is also keeping his distance from Democratic leadership, saying he does not believe President Biden should run for re-election. He's calling for a new generation of leadership. Diane.
All right, Rachel Scott, thank you. And an investigation is underway in Pennsylvania after a carbon monoxide leak at a daycare center left dozens hospitalized. The Allentown Fire Department tells ABC News firefighters and EMTs responded to a 911 call early this morning about a child needing medical attention. When they arrived, their carbon monoxide monitors went off. Officials say the building was evacuated and a total of 27 people were taken to local hospitals. A cause of the leak has not yet been determined. And workers in Iran's oil and natural gas refineries have joined the growing anti-government protests in the country. The demonstrations over the police custody death of Mahsa Amini are intensifying and now threatening the coffers of Iran's government. Foreign correspondent James Longman is following those developments for us.
Protests in Iran are now hitting a critical sector of the country's economy. Some oil workers now on strike. They can be seen here gathering outside refineries on the Persian Gulf. It's been nearly a month of protests and they seem only to be intensifying. Gunshots and explosions could be heard early Monday in Sanandaj. It's been a hotspot for the protests. Rows of businesses shuttered as shopkeepers there go on strike. All this was first triggered by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. She died in police custody, accused of wearing her hijab improperly. But it's morphed into a wider fight for freedom, although it's come at a cost. According to Iran Human Rights, 185 citizens have been killed so far. And they include more young women, like Nika Shakarimi, seen here protesting and burning her headscarf. Her mother confirmed to the BBC that this is her 16-year-old daughter. Her family saying Iranian authorities kept Nika's death a secret for 9 days.
Our thanks to James Longman for that. And the director of the Strategic Litigation Product at the Atlantic Council, human rights lawyer Gisu Nia, is here with more on this. Gisu, thank you for being here. I know your work focuses on prevention and accountability for human rights violations around the world. So what long-term effects do you think that these protests can have in Iran?
Well, I think the most important thing right now is to take efforts to stop this violence and to also support the people of Iran. Countries around the world for a long time have had foreign policy that focuses on assuming that the Islamic Republic and the leadership will be in power and that it will be somewhat stable. The recent events show that that's not necessarily going to be the case. And so countries around the world really need to start to reorient themselves to what a world without the Islamic Republic looks like, and to have a plan for how they would support Iran's people, which is really different from the longtime emphasis on negotiating with Iran on a nuclear deal and sort of pursuing a containment strategy. Accountability is part of that as well, looking to what happens in the future, whether those trials against perpetrators would be happening domestically in the country or through some sort of international body.
Now, what immediate action can the global community take on this issue?
Well, there's a few things that they can do today if they wish to. One is to call a special session at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva to discuss the establishment of a UN investigative mechanism that would collect and preserve the evidence of these violations that we're seeing on videos coming out of Iran, the sort of brutal, violent crackdown on peaceful protesters, the violence against schoolgirls, the shooting of civilians in Sanandaj. So that would be an immediate step that could be taken today if countries wish to do so. And there's been a letter that 21 human rights organizations sent to the Biden administration in the US, really calling on them to take leadership on that effort. The states could also start to pass laws that allow for the seizure of assets of Islamic Republic of Iran officials who have their assets and properties in North America and Europe, despite targeted human rights sanctions and other restrictions, and to really crack down on the children of these individuals who live, work, and study in North America and Europe and use the corrupt monies of their fathers and the money that was obtained off the backs of human rights violations.
All right, Gisa Nia, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, with midterm elections less than a month away, crime is a major voting issue. Our Pierre Thomas sits down exclusively with Chicago's superintendent about what's being done to curb shootings there and the potential glimmer of hope that may help other cities. Stay with us. Welcome back. A new report is showing a glimmer of hope for gun violence. While the epidemic of shootings across the country is still relentless, an ABC News Gun Violence Archive analysis shows some hints of progress. After 2 years of dramatic increases in shootings, homicides are down nearly 5% in the 50 biggest U.S. cities, and New York and Chicago are seeing double-digit decreases. ABC News Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas went to Chicago for an exclusive conversation with the police superintendent.
Chicago is no stranger to the sound of gunfire. The last few weekends particularly bloody, not even children spared from being shot or killed. In one case, likely gang-related, 9 people shot, 2 killed. In another, a 10-year-old boy wounded while walking with his dad.
We have had our challenges these past several days.
For Chicago police, it's a fight of life and death. But there are green shoots of hope. Shootings in the city are down 20% through the end of summer. Homicides falling 16%. That's 101 fewer people killed this year compared to last year. Yet there have still been more than 2,100 shootings this year and 513 homicides.
It's the most complex policing landscape ever in this country's history. We are making progress, but the complexities make it such that it's so fragile.
I spent the day with Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown, where we had a raw, honest conversation about what's working and what's not in his fight against gun violence. At the core of the city's violence is gang activity and drug dealing, and an increasing willingness to pull the trigger among all Chicagoans.
Or road rage, more domestic gender-based violence, social media-driven violence. But the bottom line is the inability to resolve personal conflicts. And it escalates to, now I want to kill you.
It's now routine to find 40 bullet casings at a single shooting.
Is there any particular incident in the last couple years or recently that sort of sticks in your mind?
It's children. It is the impact that gun violence is having on children. There's one particular case where a baby, 7-year-olds with their dad in a McDonald's drive-thru. And the person who has been trying to shoot and kill this other person because of a gang conflict just shoots up the car, riddled with bullets, and this young baby dies.
With such wrenching violence, the city has been deploying new tactics, seeing declines after more surgically deploying officers.
If you're able to find that hornet's nest and focus your resources on those small gun violence geographic areas, we've seen significant declines.
I sense with you that this really is a dynamic battle, if you will. It's not, no one's declaring victory here, even as you make progress.
You know, we're making progress, but we are not in any way, shape, or form satisfied.
And police have taken, on average, 12,000 guns a year off the street, historic numbers.
I don't think we're even chipping away at a large percentage of the illegal guns in this community.
The superintendent said what is working to bring down shootings is officers aggressively responding to shots fired.
You'll see case after case after case of officers running toward danger, running toward gunfire, risking their lives. 150 the last 2.5 years, officers shot at and shot.
Collaboration is also working. More cooperative programs with social services and housing. And police are using more technology. Watch closely. This man dressed in black riding a bicycle randomly shoots this woman in the back. The special team of investigators goes out with the homicide detectives, hunting for camera footage from homes and businesses.
And they actually try to follow these individuals prior to the incident and post the incident.
Cameras giving a clear-cut vision of the suspect at a bicycle shop he visited earlier that day.
And then we go there, and you get that money shot.
They track him through the city.
Almost 6 hours after the incident, boom, he just ran past the officer.
Then a shootout with police wounding an officer. The sound caught on sensors planted throughout the city so police can monitor for gunfire. But as they push shootings down overall, robberies and motor vehicle theft have spiked dramatically. And Superintendent Brown is willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. Many of the victims and suspects, often men of color.
The demographics are what they are in terms of people that look like you and me, who are shooters and are victims. How, as a black man and as a law enforcement executive, do you balance how you feel about that?
I think the first step for me personally is to never forget where I've come from.
For Brown, it's personal. On Father's Day in 2010, his own son killing a stranger and a responding officer during an apparent mental breakdown before being killed by police in a suburb of Dallas, where Brown previously served as chief.
It's easy for me to see the pain, feel the pain, not from a distance. I'm really sensing, I know how that parent feels.
Because you've been through it.
I have. I know how that feels. And I know how it feels when people, maybe outside the community, blame the parents for what's happened in the community.
Brown says he spends a lot of time in community outreach, trying to build trust after George Floyd.
George Floyd being murdered on videotape by Officer Chauvin revealed the people we should have never hired in our police departments.
So how did you try to build the community trust, and how difficult has it been?
Made it more difficult to even be heard. So we had a recent community meeting in an area who's seen a 41% reduction in homicides. And they were upset at police for not doing their job. And I wanted to really talk about, man, how can you be upset? And then I thought to myself, listen more than you talk. So, you know, we gave opportunity for the communities to talk about what they were upset with us about.
Brown taking the community's complaints about low-level crime back to his team for action.
Can we get that done today? Get some training done? Reach out to the captain, 2nd District.
Brown believes in aggressively arresting and prosecuting the small core of shooters and killers who terrorize poor communities. He does not believe in mass incarceration and stop and frisk.
If I wear some blue jeans and a T-shirt and walk outside this building, I'll get stopped more than once.
But Brown says having sustained success against crime will also require a broad economic plan.
Our impoverished communities in Chicago here, we just did not have the commitment.
He's hoping the city's more than $1 billion investment will lead to long-term crime reduction.
You can't police yourself out of poverty.
Police transformed this one-time drug corner into a basketball court and green space for sports and arts.
So we're trying to create as many interactions with young people outside of the criminal justice system. We want to engage them before crisis happen and know them and them know us. People who have hope, can have dreams of a better life. People who have dreams of a better life are not attracted to violence.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas for that report. Coming up, a major railroad union rejects the proposed deal President Biden personally helped reach. Where that leaves workers and a potential rail strike after this. Welcome back to ABC News Live. The third largest railroad union in the country has rejected a deal with employers. That renews the possibility of a strike that could devastate the supply chain. Despite raises and bonuses, the union president says railroaders do not feel valued, citing lack of paid time off and working conditions. A deadline for a new deal has been set for November 19th. Public health officials are warning of a potentially severe flu season. In New York, officials have noted 600 influenza cases compared to just 150 this time last year. Officials are urging people ages 6 months and older to get their flu shot by the end of this month. And today is National Coming Out Day, an annual awareness day for those coming out as LGBTQ+. We've asked some of our colleagues here at ABC News to share their experiences. Here's our Will Gans.
Hey everybody, Will Gans here. Happy National Coming Out Day. So my coming out story involves me popping out of the stage at Madison Square Garden in the middle of a Celine Dion concert. There was glitter and confetti everywhere. And that is not true. That is not a true story, no matter how badly I wish it was a true story. I'm from the suburbs of Texas, so for me, coming out was a process, and it was not always easy. I think I always thought that you would just come out once, and that was it. And it was like ripping a Band-Aid off, and all of a sudden you were out, and there was, butterflies flying and rainbows behind you and all of that stuff. But no, it's work, and it's worthwhile work. That's what I've learned, Like everybody, you get to know yourself a little bit better as you grow, and you decide which parts of yourself you want to share with whom. And I'm very lucky because my friends and my family have been incredibly supportive and celebrate me and my authentic self. And that's what this is all about. Wherever you're at in your journey, and if you're, an ally, we can all celebrate authenticity and lift each other up and support those who might be doubting themselves as they get to know themselves. But happy National Coming Out Day, and it is a happy thing. It's a hard process, but it's a worthwhile process. So sending you guys lots of warm wishes, and Celine Dion, we can still make that fantasy of mine happen if you're listening to this, right?
I'll write her a strongly worded letter for you, Will. Thanks. And a happy National Coming Out Day to you. I'm Diane Macedo. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.